For 71 years, there's been a 4-kilometre wide demilitarised zone between North and South Korea. The hope for this wide border is it prevents the two countries clashing and ending up at war. Well, shots have now been fired by the South after a row over propaganda drones. The Times Asia editor Richard Lloyd Parry can tell us what is happening. Richard, good morning to you.
Hello there, Stig.
There's this story, isn't it, that the war never actually fully ended between North and South Korea. There's just been this uneasy peace for 70-odd years. How uneasy is it?
Well, it's very uneasy when you look at the kind of things that both sides say to one another. But on the other hand, it is more than 70 years since the Korean War ended. So I think that tells you that underneath it all, there's a weird kind of extremely uneasy, unstable stability in all this. The Korean Peninsula has been at peace for far longer than, say, the Balkans or the Falkland Islands or many other places in the world. But at the same time, the kind of language that's used and the extremely concentrated density of very high-tech weaponry and troops in a very small area, of course, is cause for alarm.
Is there also a question that South Korea is a very developed country with a lot to lose? There's lots of conversation about North Korea, which is a dictatorship. Not a lot of news comes out of it, but it feels it can be seen to be very poor. It's obviously dominated by China. Is there a risk that North Korea has less to lose than South Korea, and therefore that might impact on the equation somewhere along the line?
Yeah, South Koreans have a very great deal to lose. They have extremely rich, successful, dynamic, creative society, very much concentrated in one city, Seoul, which is only about 40 miles from the North Korean border, well within range of their conventional rockets and artillery, chemical weapons, biological weapons, all that. So they have a lot to lose. North Koreans have a lot to lose too, but they don't have any choice because they live under this dictatorship, which makes all the decisions and allows them no freedom or say in it whatsoever. But that dictatorship has a lot to lose too. And this is why it's remained stable, if that's the right word, for all this time, because the Kim regime, they're not mad, they're not suicidal. Kim Jong-un, like his father and grandfather, wants to die of old age peacefully in his bed, which both his forebears did. Now, to go to war would, to put it mildly, jeopardize his chances of achieving that goal. So, both sides have a reason for not stepping over the edge, even though they often sound as if they're about to.
And what would China want? Because China is obviously the dominant power in the area. We spoke a bit yesterday about what it might want to do with Taiwan and how much it can rattle sabers in that direction. What does China want in all of this?
China probably, although of course they'd never say it, just wants it all to go away, as the rest of the world does. It's a headache for China. On the one hand, North Korea is in some ways a buffer. If the Korean Peninsula was reunified with the South calling the shots, then essentially China would have a strong US ally, probably US troops on its border. It doesn't want that for the obvious reasons. At the same time, I think the Chinese find the North Koreans and the Kim regime as much of a headache, as difficult as many Western countries do. They don't do as they're told. They're certainly very far from being a Chinese client state. Throughout their history, they've played off China against Russia during the Cold War, which is something they're doing now with great success with Kim's buddyish relationship with Vladimir Putin.
And that's interesting in itself, isn't it? Because Putin is a warmonger. Putin is willing to take on wars in difficult circumstances and then persist in the grind of them even after they've gone bad. There's evidence that North Korea have been arming Russia. Sometimes, is that true in Ukraine, that you sometimes get North Korean munitions used by Russians? Could Russia play any role in the peace of this part of the world?
Yeah, there's no doubt that North Korea is sending a lot of artillery shells to Ukraine. The Ukrainian government says that I think something like a third, maybe a half of the shells being fired at them by the Russians are from North Korea. They're the biggest contributor of arms to that war. Rumours recently that maybe small numbers of engineers, North Korean engineers, have been there. Although North Korea, I think, is not going to send divisions of troops there. As for going the other way, I don't think Vladimir Putin's in any position to start fighting for North Korea. Let's be frank; he's got enough to think about. And actually, I think Putin's experience in Ukraine sends a message to countries everywhere, and certainly to North Korea and especially China over Taiwan, that you can very easily bite off more than you can chew and become bogged down. However the war may be going now, it hasn't gone Russia's way, and clearly it didn't go that invasion didn't work out as Putin anticipated. And that's something for Kim Jong-un to think about as well. Not that he really needs reminding.
No, but this is fascinating stuff. It's amazing how one part of the world touches upon another when you think about all of these things. Really good to speak to you, Richard. Thank you for joining us. That's Richard Lloyd Parry there, the Times' Asia editor.